To be assertive without saying a word, all you need to do is think about the logical consequences of this other person's behaviour, and then you simply let nature take its course. This way of being assertive is very similar to the let them theory that is going viral online right now. But in my opinion, this way is better because it provides context beyond simply telling yourself just let other people do whatever they want to do. More specifically though, here is what you do. First of all, after you observe the behaviour you'd ideally like to address or change in the other person, you ask yourself, what would happen if I didn't interfere? You search for the consequence of their behaviour, and then you let that consequence naturally happen. You don't have to say anything to the person in this stage, but if you do want to let the person know what that consequence might be, you can deliver a when, if, you behaviour, then consequence statement. Finally, you do your best to detach yourself emotionally from the issue, because when other people realise you're not emotionally involved, they realise it's all their ball game. Don't worry, we're going to cover some examples of what these 3 stages look like in a few minutes' time, but before we do so, let's back up a little bit and consider, why does all of this matter in the first place? This matters because the hardest thing about socialising and relationships is the urge to change other people's behaviour. It's devilishly easy to convince yourself you know best, and if only other people did what you told them to, everything would be fine. All of the time. But this urge to change other people's behaviour is exactly what leads our social lives into being a living hell, and leads to nothing more than high blood pressure, late night conversations and text messages longer than a humpback whale, and being sat in your room after an interaction with someone screw-faced looking at the wall wondering why everyone is your enemy. And it's largely because, as humans, when we're asked to change, we rarely do so. In fact, when we're asked to change, we do the exact opposite. So this is the big picture. The best way to get someone to change their behaviour is to deliver an assertion message. And the standard one is when you, action, I feel, emotion, because of the effect that has on your life or your underlying need. For example, when you interrupt me while I'm speaking, I feel angered because I have the need to be listened to and respected. And once you deliver this message, you then have to call up every last bit of empathy and emotional intelligence you have in order to explore the issue with this person further, after you first clear the path of the obstacles which are the other person's resistance and now likely heated emotions. But although this process works, and I've made a whole video about it, you have to express the initial gut-wrenching vulnerability to deliver the message in the first place, not to mention, although effective, this process takes time. Because it's a very rare human being who is going to be on the receiving end of such a statement and just be like, oh, well, yeah, thanks for letting me know. Yeah, that's fine. I'll change my behaviour to accommodate for your needs. The other person is likely going to bite back to you delivering this message, and it's going to be a back and forth, known as the push-back phenomenon, of 5 or 6 different points where you're going to have to explore the issue further until both of your emotions calm down and you both leave the conversation feeling like you've understood each other. So, by simply highlighting the logical consequences of the other person's behaviour and not getting involved emotionally, that's a much simpler alternative. But in order to explain the background and the context of why the logical consequences technique works, we have to go into the origins of how it came about. You see, the logical consequences idea was developed by an Austrian psychiatrist in the 1950s-ish, don't quote me on that. His name was Rudolf Dreikes. If you're Austrian, I apologise. This method originated from Druker's using it to help children learn something called self-directed behaviour change, where they felt responsible and capable enough to change their own behaviour rather than have an adult lecturing them on how to do so. So in order to explain this a little bit further, let's now look at how this plays out with children. You see, when it comes to changing someone's behaviour, whether that's a child or an adult, most people use one of three methods. Standard up first is punishment. Second of all is reward. And then thirdly is convincing through logic. But here are the issues with these three methods of trying to change someone's behaviour. Then we're going to finalise the video with covering some juicy examples of how you can practically apply this to your life. First of all, if you overly punish a child, for example, the child is just going to become submissive, which isn't good for their growth or their ability to take responsibility for their own actions. Second of all, if you overly reward a child, that again is displaying disrespect towards the child's ability to contribute freely through their autonomy without being incentivized to do so. Second of all, when the reward runs out, the child is just going to reason, well, what's in it for me? There's no point of doing this now because I'm not being rewarded for it. And then finally, when you try to convince a child through logic, they become what's known as parent deaf. They just switch off and they stop listening to you. Yeah, whatever. And they give you counterfeit answers to clear you away. So the logical consequences method was introduced as a simpler and easier alternative to these three problematic methods of trying to change someone's behaviour. And remember the three ways, the three steps of the logical consequences. First of all, you observe the behaviour of the other person and you simply ask yourself, what would happen if I didn't interfere? Then you can leave it there, or you can deliver the message of when or if you, action, then consequence. And then finally, you detach yourself emotionally from the issue. Seeing as we was in the context of talking about children, let's imagine you're a parent, okay? And your son, he's 10 years old and he's just been bought a brand new bike for his birthday. But he keeps leaving the brand new bike out in the front garden instead of locking it up at night. And this has caused a lot of issues in your household because you're trying to convince him that he needs to leave it inside and whatnot, and he's not listening to you because he's chilled and whatever. So using this framework, you simply say to him, listen, Jimmy, when you leave your bike out in the front garden instead of locking it up, action, then there's a high chance it's going to get stolen, consequence. And if it does get stolen, you're not going to get a new bike until your next birthday, consequence again. Then your child is completely free to learn a valuable lesson about their possessions in life, and they understand you're not emotionally involved in the issue and it's all their ball game. It's all their responsibility. The child can do whatever they want to. They only need to face the consequences. So, as the sun beams through the window, let's now cover, whoa, shouldn't have looked at the sun. Let's now cover how to apply this to adults. Sorry, stickmen. If someone keeps interrupting you while you're talking, the logical consequence is you're going to become disinterested in the conversation and you're going to want to stop speaking to this person. You can let those consequences naturally take their course, or you can communicate it to the person by saying, if you keep interrupting me while I talk, I'm going to end this conversation. I'd like to talk to you, but I only want to do so when we're both listening to each other. Another one. Let's say someone disrespects you in public. The logical consequence is you're going to want to spend less time with them. You can leave it there and just spend less time with them, or you can say, if you bring up that story I told you not to mention, I'm going to leave the conversation. Another example. I'm trying to cover quite a broad range of contexts here, but hopefully this is resonating. Let's say you've scheduled a call with someone but they arrive late. The logical consequence is you're going to have less time during the call, you're going to leave, or you're going to start the call without them. You can leave it there, or you can communicate this to them by saying, if you arrive more than 10 minutes late, I'm going to leave the call. Or you can simply leave the call after 10 minutes, and then when they reach out, say, hey, where were you? You deliver that message simply. Because you weren't there, I left the call. Another example. Let's say your boss, even after you've stated you're already too busy, keeps increasing your workload. The logical consequence of that is you're going to feel overwhelmed and your performance on other projects is going to decrease. Leave it there, or you can communicate, if you keep increasing my workload before I'm ready to take on new projects, my performance on other projects you've already assigned me is going to decrease. And it's up to him. Final example, let's say you've lent someone money but they haven't paid you back. The logical consequence is going to be you're going to lose trust for this person and you're not going to want to help them out in the future. So after highlighting that, let the consequence take its natural course, or communicate it to this person by saying, if you don't pay me back the money, I'm not going to help you out in the future. But before we bring this video to a close, you have to note one thing that might trip you up when you're delivering such a message of if, you, action, then consequence. You see, when you deliver such a message, you're delivering an ultimatum. And there's a very fine line between a healthy and an unhealthy ultimatum. Okay, have a little think about the differences between both types of ultimatums as I'm reading them out. And we've got to be quick because the sun is now approaching the whiteboard. An unhealthy ultimatum sounds like this. We need to have kids or else. If you go out with your friends, I'm not talking to you for the rest of the week. If you don't work late tonight, I'm not giving you the time off you've requested. Real note though, I had a manager who did this all of the time in my last sales job. He threatened us every single late shift we did pretty much to either get our commission or not. Long story short, we had to work insanely long hours just to please him. It's called a tyrannical state. Healthy ultimatums. If you aren't ready to leave by 7, I'll take a taxi without you. If I find out you're drinking again, I won't loan you money. Finally, if you don't tell me what you want for dinner, I'll decide in the next hour. Fair enough. As a rule of thumb, an unhealthy ultimatum is delivered at the expense of the other person. It's delivered as a threat. Consider it as if you're holding the relationship as hostage. A healthy ultimatum, however, is delivered as respectfully as possible and without threatening the other person. As we bring this video to a close, let's make this interactive and as applicable to your life as possible. Go down to the comments, feel free, and think about a situation you encountered recently where you either used a healthy ultimatum or you delivered a logical consequence, or you didn't, but you now realise that delivering such a logical consequence would have helped you in that situation. Comment it down below because it would be interesting to see what examples you come up with and how broad we can make the context of this method. But before we end the video, I just want to leave you with this. Of course, in some situations, more context or conflict resolution is going to be required. However, the logical consequences method is a simple and easier alternative to being assertive without getting too emotionally involved in the issue. So it's up to you whether you want to simply let the consequence plan out or you want to get a little bit more involved in the issue by bringing open and honest communication to the table to solve the conflict a little bit further. Videos, big videos upcoming on how to do that very soon. Anyway, won't keep you too much longer. Stay disciplined, playful and dangerous. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Adios muchachos y muchachas. To address or change in the other person, you ask yourself, didn't know dinosaurs still exist?